Hi, I'm Jordan Thorne. We're here at TMRE 2019. Today I'm joined by Kevin Lee. He's the China Futurist and COO of China Youthology. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Amazing. So, Kevin, can you talk a bit about your journey from first starting out in your career to now serving in an executive role at a relatively young age?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I mean, I went out to China really just to explore that country. It's just an emerging market, so many opportunities, and to get out there early and young, you can't go wrong.
Yeah.
You can fail a number of times and you'd still end out okay. And actually, when I got there, being an explorer, being somebody that asks a lot of questions, I just had my eyes open to many different types of people. My first job actually in China was teaching at the University of Beijing University. So Beijing University. And I met a whole group of people that I'd never met before. And then I switched to other roles where I'd met professionals and different types of people. And as I was looking to all these different types of people, I started to get a lot of insights into how different groups in China were thinking about their country, about their life, about their work. And I started to write blogs. And it's actually this role in what I've been doing, and I've been with my company now for 10 years. Me and the other partners have grown it out from 5 people. Now we're about 80, 90 people.
Amazing.
Between two cities. But we actually I met one of my partners. We were on a BBC radio show.
Oh, wow. How funny.
Doing a panel on youth marketing. And then one of my other co-founders, I met him through Twitter. And it was early days of blogging and Twitter. And in those days, really just the most leading edge were online and playing with the social media stuff, especially in China. And so all the thought leaders got to know each other. And so soon after, we got to doing some interesting things together. And in those days, anything that we wanted to do, no one had ever heard of it. No one had ever thought about it. And so you really have to trailblaze. And for a number of years, you have to try to convince people. You have to tell your story. You have to help them understand that not only the work that you've done, which sometimes they don't even understand, but a lot of times it's the trust in you.
Yeah.
So it has to be your character. It has to be how you put yourself forward in a meeting, how you present your ideas, so that they can trust that you're a bright person.
Yeah.
And that you have a view to the future and you have a view to the way forward, which of course everyone is looking for and willing to try on. So that's kind of how we built it. And I would say that we're lucky enough. I'm still young. I'm not as young as I used to be, but even early on in those days, we were still in our late 20s, and we were already in boardrooms with C-levels of multinational companies, board levels, and so oftentimes I still pinch myself because I'm like, if I were in North America, the road would definitely be very different. But being in a place like China, where it's basically the Wild West, as long as you're bright, you can have a very interesting future. So I can walk into a meeting with ripped jeans and a t-shirt and be across the table from some very, very powerful, influential business leaders. And I don't think I would ever get those opportunities in North America per se, but in China, just because of the wonderful dynamics of the last 10 plus years, it's given me the opportunity.
So interesting. So it sounds like sort of you had to have an advantage to kind of uncharted territories.
That's right. I mean, just think about it like how we think about brands today, right?
Yeah.
We want to go into a blue ocean. We need to think about that personally as well. As individuals, I continue to think of myself as an entrepreneur. I've done about 3 different startups, and this is my 4th one. And so you're always thinking about professionally as well. How do you move into blue oceans?
Yeah.
For me, I knew I was going to go to China back in the 90s.
Wow.
And in those days, when I told my family I was going to go to China, they looked at me and furrowed their brows and they said, "Why China? It makes no sense. Go to Wall Street or go to Silicon Valley."
Yeah.
Well, those are all the tried and true places where today or yesterday was very hot. But even 20 years ago, because I'm a student of history, and if you study history, you understand that in every generation, there's probably only 1 or 2 or 3 places in the world where bright minds gather.
Yeah.
And so I asked myself back in the 90s, I said, in our generation, where are the places that bright minds are going to gather? And when I looked at that through a historical lens, but also through an economic lens, I knew that China was the place to be. So I got out there early, and it's been a really wonderful opportunity.
Sounds incredible. Wow. It's impressive. So, you talked a lot about being going there young. And it sounds like in China, it's a little bit different sort of how they perceive you. But I'm just curious if you face any barriers along your journey to leadership. And if so, how did you turn this into an advantage?
So the barriers are very much the age, right?
Yeah.
In the very beginning, because nobody had seen young people like us out there. The only thing that we had going for us was a very unique and a very radically different story. Our corporate mission has always been, since the very, very first days, about elevating and empowering the youth voice. And to give you some more context, before we came along, there was no real venue and place of youth voice in China. When we had started this, the internet was just getting started, social media was just getting started. And before that, if anyone has ever been to China before the internet, there really isn't much place for young people to go. I mean, television is basically one channel. There's no street culture. No one's hanging out. There's never been a legacy of young people gathering together and creating identity and creating voice. But we, as the first cohort, start to feel that. And of course, me coming from North America, had that heritage that I experienced from here.
Yeah.
And so seeing the potential and seeing the opportunity, partnering with the partners I had who are the most leading edge for China, we felt like now's the time to elevate that, to help young people know that it's okay to have a voice, to give them encouragement and space to do that. And so the early days was a lot about that. There's a lot of people really confused us as an NGO. They thought we were just here just to do like youth engagement and youth empowerment, and we are. But we always knew from the first day that we wanted to be a for-profit company. That gives us a lot more autonomy. It allows us to make more decisions of doing what we want to do, at the same time, allowing us to support young people the way we want. And so, because of that authentic story, because of how we presented ourselves authentically, that we're not here just for your dollar.
Yeah.
We're not here just because we need, not hat in hand trying to get your money. We're doing this for a purpose.
Yeah.
And we've been doing this for the last 10 years. And so people have really bought into that, and again, it's not just on our side, really early, leading edge people doing entrepreneurship, but even on the client side. You need to understand that people that come out to China on the client side as executives, they're really known oftentimes as rebels in their own company, at least in the early days.
Okay.
Where they would go to China, do the China market. In those days, it wasn't the set path to the CEO. Today, it is. Today, if you want to be a CEO, you have to do the China market.
Wow,
but
okay.
in the early days, those were really the thought leaders that came through the corporations. And so when they saw us, they had a whiff of authenticity, and they had a whiff of partners that they would really enjoy working with. And so that gave us a foot in the door. But the things that we had struggled with, of course, was really linking it back to the business. As young people, what we knew first and foremost was research.
Yep.
I mean, my CEO and founder is an anthropologist.
Oh, wow.
My co-founder is a sociologist, and I come through in the arts and histories, but also with a business degree. And so we kind of round each other out very well. But they just knew the research, and we were so geeky about the research. Everything was just about the quality of young people and the stories that we were to present. But of course, the big jump and the gap was, how do we help businesses use that? And that's something that we've learned over the years in starts and stops, but a lot of successes, but through a lot of failures as well.
Wow, so interesting. So you're kind of already talking a lot about the importance of businesses catering to the youth consumer. And in your organization, China Youthology, do you think it's equally important for your employees to reflect that same audience in order to stay innovative and creatively ahead of the game?
Yeah, so our hiring policies are exactly that, and this is actually what I consult to most CHOs or whatever, and most CEOs as well, because they often ask us, hey, like, how do you do what you do? What makes you guys so different? And it starts with the hiring practice. You need to hire your target market.
Yeah.
So for us, we have one very specific philosophy, which is, it takes a youth to research a youth. It also takes an insider to research well, right? So if you want to get into, let's say, skateboarding culture, you don't throw some middle-aged guy who has never touched a skateboard and go research a skateboarder.
Yeah.
You need a skateboarder to research a skateboarder.
Yeah.
If you want to research gaming, you better have a gamer to research gaming, because the gamers will throw a lot of acronyms, a lot of catchphrases that if you're not already in the culture, you will never know. And for most traditional researchers, they tumble and fall out of that because they just don't know what the consumers are actually saying. The consumers are so deep in their own culture. What they want and what you should be offering to them is that they're speaking to friends. They should be not in a focus group, not in a room with a one-way mirror, but they really should be in a living room with a buddy of theirs, just talking about the stuff that they love. And in that way, you go way deeper into the stuff. And so for us, the hiring practice is very simple. Hire young, hire bright, hire insiders, people that are geeky about what they know, people that are subcultural about what they do, because only in that way can they go deeper, because they will be able to sense out what are the actual nuanced, unspoken insights that most people, if you're just running off a discussion guide, will never get.
Yeah.
But it's always about, listening to your consumer in their language. And I'm not talking about, Chinese and English.
Yeah.
I'm talking really about the cultural language. And that's really important. That's how we go deeper.
Sounds incredible. I think it sounds like you have quite an advantage in sort of understanding how to get the insights.
And it's the same thing for clients as well. When we talk to our corporate clients, the first thing, like pie in the sky, is to say, hey, start with a whole new team or build a new team ground up. And we actually have some clients that have done that. They've done a Skunkworks thing. Maybe it's a sub-brand. They want to get a young brand. And so they need to hire a completely new team that's younger to know how to build that brand and also know how to listen to the young consumer. That's the best case scenario. But of course, if you don't have that capability, there's also lots of things to do. Number one, you can continue to train, right? You can continue to partner. We have some clients who have their seasoned inside professionals work with, let's say, the younger, fresh intake interns or first year employees in their company and work together. Then they have the ear of a young consumer. Or of course, then there's abilities to work with people like us who can continually translate what the young people are saying so that a different generation can understand.
It's a really great idea to sort of mix in companies that maybe aren't quite comfortable with fully going the route of hiring really young employees. I'm curious, I'm just kind of curious where you think in like the next 10, 20 years, the youth culture and the influence will kind of raise up within China.
That's a really good and very difficult question.
Yeah, I'm so kind of threw that on you, but it's just it's interesting.
It's a difficult question because of the timing right now.
Yeah.
With everything that's happening politically in the area, 10 years is way too far.
Okay.
If you're in China, whether you're on the corporate side or any other side, as a China observer, you know that predicting even 1 year ahead is really tough.
Okay.
Like even the things that we're experiencing right now in Asia, nobody could have predicted even 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So it is really hard to understand what all the big shifts are. But having said that, what is happening today and the reality that social media is just getting stronger, this generation is, no government or no society is going to be able to take away the paths or the connectivity of the next generation. And if you actually see the next generation today, they only know how to navigate the world through social media because they were born into it.
Yeah.
It wasn't like us who maybe found social media halfway through our lives and have to learn into it, but we also remember a time maybe with paper maps or something like that.
Yeah.
Today a person walks down the street only knowing the locations that are pin dropped by their friends.
Yeah.
And so we're already way past and way into that road. And what that means then is that a couple of things. One, the fragmentation when it comes to what people are really into is going to get more fragmented. Meaning because social media is getting so deep, like broad internets are getting so deep that people can be so deeply into their one culture and have completely no idea and no relevance to what the culture is of the person sitting next to them. And we're talking about the people same age, same socioeconomic status, same location, same gender even. Just because the culture is getting so much deeper online that people are actually going to get more fragmented. They're going to feel that they can't connect to each other.
Yeah.
But that, of course, creates new opportunities for brands, opportunities for everyone, into saying, well, those are different things that will move them, and you need to figure out different ways of moving your consumers. The other thing, though, is actually a big amalgamation as well. As we look further into the post-2000s, post-2005s, the Chinese, next generation looks actually a lot more like the Gen Zs of the West. The reason is because they're all social media natives. They're all digital natives. And actually, the great thing about globalization, and we can talk about the trade globalization, but when we talk about the media globalization, people are able to share and to pick and choose things all over the place every day. And so young people in China are consuming media from all over the world, and not just from Hollywood, and not just from America, Bollywood and everywhere else too. And so the great thing is, and the interesting thing now is that has become a new cultural melting pot.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's all the same. You still get to pick and choose what you care about, and that's going to be highly fragmented. But the menu or what's offered is actually going to start looking a lot similar. So in that way, we see a lot of similarities. A lot of the new leading behaviors I see in China are actually the similar leading behaviors that you see in the UK, in Europe, and in America.
Okay.
It's all because everyone is learning the new stuff all together.
Yeah.
Right? All the new capabilities, technologically, way of life, it's all happening at the same time everywhere. And in some areas, China is actually ahead of North America or other places because of the pace of technology that we have. So that's what it is. The last thing I would say, which you would want to look out for, is because the way that technology is starting to integrate online and offline, everything is, of course, going to be is all one ecosystem. But it's not just the fact that it's all one ecosystem where everything's facial recognition, but it's more the fact that it's all, especially in China, owned by one or two companies, where what they're doing is not just getting your data, but what they're doing is they are learning how to gamify you and gamify your environment. And so what you have going into the future is people that are living in ecosystems that are more integrated and more gamified by a few major platforms. And so what that means then is for the next generation, how do they live in a world that is highly gamified?
Yeah.
Do they follow suit? Do they disrupt? Do they reject? That's going to be a very interesting question. In China, I don't think they're going to reject, because the gamification actually gives them benefits to move ahead and move forward. And all young people want to move ahead in their lives, and the gamification is built for that purpose, to help them move ahead in their lives. Of course, that gives us a cautionary tale about what happens when you gamify yourself all the way into a bubble.
Yeah.
That's an interesting question mark. That's a question mark that we work on with our clients, actually. And of course, standing on the side of youth, how do we continually afford not just a fair, but an ethical playing ground that allows the next generation to continue to thrive and to grow and to explore freely. So those are the interesting dynamics that we're seeing already in China. But it's so hard to predict because it's just changing so fast.
Yeah, I guess you just have to really keep a close eye on changes and sort of allow for that growth from different companies and people to sort of surge and meet that demand.
Yeah, and that's why we love what we do, because we sit at the forefront and at the center of that.
Yeah.
We work with the most leading companies in China, like Tencent and Alibaba. We work with the most leading consumers in China, and they are in one part creating their own lives, and Alibaba and Tencent are catching up. In other parts, Alibaba and Tencent are creating whole new things, and these leading consumers are either engaging them or they're rejecting them. And there's this wonderful friction and engagement in the middle, and that's where we sit. So we kind of see all the new things, and we get to translate between both sides. What are the possibilities? Is this good or is this not? So it's a lot of fun every single day, every single project.
Sounds really exciting to sort of see what's next. So how would you describe youth-driven change, and why is it different to other drivers of change?
Yeah, that's a great question too. For us, again, the context here is us in China, and so, and I would say in part, I don't want to compare as much with other markets because they have historically a different heritage, but we believe in China, for Youthology at least, that the youth perspective should be more valued. And I would say that even in North America and Europe, that I can make the same statements or the same hope. Oftentimes, especially when at an event like this with market research, the research goes towards where the money is. Whoever has the most money is spending the most. That's where all the research is spent. But and of course here in North America, it's actually boomers. It's actually not the young. But the question really is, because the new products and the new ideas that are being developed by companies are for the future of society. And so the question is, should the youth voice be a more integral part of the discourse of the entire society? In one part, innovation, because they have an interesting and perhaps a more valid claim to what the future might look, because it's their future. So they have some ideas about what they hope the future to look like. So should their voice be included and be stronger in society? The other part of that is actual social participation as well. And are they represented in the right way? In China, it's both of those things. The important factor here as well, which I have not yet mentioned, but it's very important, and this is again the first time it's happened not just in China but in the rest of the world, but especially in China. When we talk about youth voice, we're also talking about, and the reason why youth voice now is not just because they should be involved in society, it's also because youth are now much more creative than they ever have been before. They, in their hands, are now creative tools than any generation before, right? The boomers, the Xers, they never had the type of creative tools that this generation has had. And so creators is not only the Hollywood producers anymore, it's not only the high-tech inventors anymore. Creators are every other person, because everyone has interesting perspectives today as we grow in individualism. And we have the tools of the trade, which is social media, content, and especially in China, you can start a business tomorrow. You can start a fashion brand. You can start even your own apps. You can do anything, right? Coding is even not even that hard. So we have a whole new emergence of, we used to talk about creative class. We now have generations that are entirely creative classes. And so the question is, how do we give them more opportunity to take part and contribute in society? Because they're able to do that now. And so we talk a lot to brands. Brands have been structured where they create all the solutions. They send a couple solutions to consumers to just do A/B testing, right? Validate one, and then they just go with one. But the reality is that the most creative people are definitely not in the boardroom. The most creative people are actually already out there in the market as consumers. And so why should we leave all the creativity to the people in the boardroom? Instead, why don't we flip that inside out and allow the creativity that's already happening outside in the marketplace come into the boardroom and work with the boardroom? And so that's in part of what we talk about when we talk about youth voice. Is not just the right time, but they also have the right capabilities now. And so it's the right thing.
So what's the challenge to getting that to actually happen?
Yeah, so that challenge, of course, is the corporate organizational structure. That is certainly a difficulty. Now, I would say again, it was harder before. These days, it's not that hard anymore. For a few reasons. Number one, most of the executives today have kids, and most of those kids are pretty darn creative. And so most executives today realize that the next generation is creative. Number two, the pace of innovation and change is so fast now that the older executives feel very, very insecure. And so they know that the pace of change is faster than even they can do. And so they're looking for next generation to power that change. And so it's a lot easier today. But having said that, I would say that probably still the biggest issues are definitely control. And also you find that organizations that are perhaps too reliant on a traditional way of managerial science. And those managerial sciences are predominantly those that are kind of pure metrics based, pure data based, pure measurement based. So they have to make all their decisions based on ratified numbers. They will have the hardest time because for them it's all about risk control and control in general. And in that way, it's hard to allow for the voice to come up and for iterations to happen. But what you're hearing, at TMRE today and almost in every single room, it's all about that. How do you iterate faster? How do you be more open? And so the pressures on these organizations, they know they need to change. They ask us all the time, how do you change? And that's why I say, start hiring some young people, But it's going to take a while for some of the legacy companies to do that unless they can start like a
something new,
sub-organization, something new. Or an amazing leader comes in and from the top down brings a lightning, strike to change the culture. And we've seen that as well. So there is opportunity there, but it does take fortitude and determination.
It's a tough battle to sort of change the norm.
But these days it's easier because you get one quarter bad results and the fire's in your chair and you have to try something new. And so very often we have clients come to us saying, we need to change now. And there's more time to wait. And so with that kind of ready motivation and audience, there's a lot that we can do.
Great. So what should we know about the next gen consumer, and how can businesses leverage insights around this consumer group to win?
What should we know about the next gen consumer? Well, I mentioned part of it already, which is the creativity part. and the other part I also mentioned was the deeper fragmentation. And I would say that that's definitely, first base. First base about the next generation consumer is that they are rising. They've risen so far in their individualism. And this is the first base of marketing strategy. They often start with segmentation. The reality is that the majority of companies today are not segmenting correctly, especially the young consumer. The reason is because they are so fragmented in their own cultures, and those cultures all exist online. And the company and the brand has no idea, because they're not where the young people are. They have no idea what the young person is looking at. They have no idea what the young person is participating in or engaging in, because their own internal teams are not the young person. They have absolutely no clue. And so quite often the segmentations that brands are working on, even when it comes to the young, is way outdated or way too shallow. And because they're just running a very different culture. So that is certainly like first base.
Okay.
Helping and having business leaders understand that probably how they're thinking about the young generation, and that's not just Chinese young youth, but it's also every other market as well. It's probably much more fragmented and much deeper in these fragmentations than they'd like to know or like to hear. But that's also where their competition is going to win. Their competition, which by the way are not the other multinational players, they are now competing with the local players, right? Those that are actually being built from the ground up, from the consumer up. And they're, especially in China, let's say you're a national player in China, you are competing against a niche player, but a niche player in China, might serve maybe 50 million people, 100 million people. That's niche for China. Now that's huge for other markets, but for China that's niche. But that's who you're competing against. And so I often talk about this with a lot of my clients. I say, you can either mean a little bit to everyone, or you can mean everything to someone.
Yeah.
And the question is this: if you're the brand or the product that offers a little something, if you mean a little bit to everyone, you're competing against a product that just means everything to somebody. In the end, which one do you think the consumer's going to choose? The consumer's going to choose the one that they felt was really, really made for them.
Yeah.
The one that had them at the heart when they were creating that product and that brand. And so that's really the key competitive landscape today, again, because of the creative consumer, and again, because of these deep fragmentations and segmentations today that are opening up all these opportunities for innovation. And so that's a space, and that's what we deal with every day for major brands to think about. How do you still manage your portfolio when you have all these new opportunities? How do you manage your investments efficiently, to be able to still engage with these really, really important subsegments?
Really incredible insights. Wow. Just to finish off, what one piece of advice could you offer to someone aspiring to be an entrepreneur or a leader?
That's a great question as well. I think the very first lesson I learned, and again, I had mentioned before, I had met one of my co-founders on a BBC radio show, and that came out of my blogging. I met another one of my co-founders from Twitter. And so for anyone that wants to be an entrepreneur, my experience is two things. And it's really just one thing, but two things. Number one, just start having a voice now. What I mean there is it's not enough to work 10, 15 years, think you're going to have all of the skill sets, and then start thinking about doing something. No, you need to start building your point of views today, and those point of views have to be public. For me, all of my opportunities opened up when I opened my mouth, and when I started to write, and when I started to share my thoughts openly, publicly. And everyone is so scared because you're afraid that people are going to judge you, people think it's going to be bad, and that quite possibly is true, but then you will eventually get better at it, and eventually you'll find your niche, and eventually you'll meet the right people that perhaps you can partner with or you can do things with. So the first thing is, if you have an inkling of ideas, start putting them out there. Don't keep them into yourself.
Okay.
The second thing is start early, even when it's half-baked, because it'll always be an iteration. You have to know that even the product that you thought fit. Even if you've done all the market research and you put it out there, you're still going to iterate. So just prepare to iterate from day one. Start iterating earlier. Start day one earlier. Get a half-baked product out there or a solution out there, and then start working on it, and getting better. So those are my two major things. I mean, it takes a lot of courage.
Yeah.
Especially today when we're all social media and nothing is forgotten, and so you don't want to make mistakes. But what is rewarded is courage, and audacity, and to be able to speak passionately and authentically, to be able to speak authentically about something that you really believe in and you think is true and you think is meaningful to the world. And if you think it's meaningful to the world, you will find other people that feel that way too, and then you're off to the races.
I think that's really helpful insights for people who are sort of sitting out there watching this and thinking like, wow, this guy has done so much. How do I do this? So I think that's great, just sort of starting. Yeah. Thank you so much for this interview. It's been great speaking with you.
Well, it's my pleasure.
Thank you.